The thoughts and views of This Is the Situation do not reflect the thoughts and views of 100.9 FM WFFR. Please enjoy this pre-recorded show. Family. This is your big brother B coming to you from my podcast radio show. This is the situation. What's the situation? Roll call. Mad, glad, sad, hurt, ashamed, or afraid. Which one are you identifying with right now? Right now, catch yourself. What are you feeling? I think it's important to always focus on how we feel every day. How we wake up every day matters to our children, matters to our employer or our employees, it matters to the world. So make sure that we get up and we say, you know what? Today is going to be fantastic. And how is today going to be fantastic? I'm going to make it the best one I've ever had. So I want everybody to get your best beverage, get you a snack, and get ready for a good show. We're going to go up a little bit with the emotions, but then we're going to smooth it out in the end. So I ask everybody just to stay tuned in. Don't go nowhere.
Exceptional care begins with a call to Harbor Hospice. For nearly 4 decades, we have provided medical, emotional, and spiritual care to hospice patients and their families. Our care team is always on, in person or virtually, to calm fears, answer questions, and find solutions. For more information, call 231-728-3442 or visit harborhospicemi.org.
Whether you are a person seeking higher learning, currently pursuing your education, or are a community member wanting to share your talents, Muskegon Community College provides a place to explore self while collaborating with others. With 49 associate degree programs and 33 certificate programs, MCC strives to reciprocate the support of our communities through action, diversity, and student success. For more information, please visit www.muskegoncc.edu.
Hey family, are you looking for a place that buys and sells used video games, movies, CDs, consoles, iPads, and more? Our local CD exchange does just that. Located on 2818 Henry Street, Muskegon, Michigan, 49441. CD Exchange is a proud sponsor of This Is the Situation podcast radio show. Family, this is your big brother B coming back at you. And you know, I've been talking for the last couple of weeks and really been dealing with it my whole life. We're trying to get involved with people, situations, and things that need to be changed. And one of the hugest things that's in my life, that's in a lot of people's life that they're going through right now is reunifying with their children and dealing with the system and CPS. So what I'm trying to do is ruling everything out. I call it ruling everything out because a lot of people that's caught up in the system right now, whether it's a crime, whether it's CPS doing investigations, doing all types of things. The system will tell us that, no, this is not true. This criminal is lying, or this parent is lying, or they try to put it off onto some children. They try to do all types of different things. So what we're doing in this series, dealing with families and reunification, is we want to rule out what they say they do not do. And I've been getting with some parents that have been involved with the CPS system and are willing to share their stories about what happened. And today, my guest has been involved with this system. And we're going to talk about how we can rule things out. We're going to talk about what does happen that's not talked about on the show today. So without further ado, I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we'll go from there.
My name is Maricela Alanis from Texas.
Okay, and you found out about This Is the Situation and me getting involved with these conversations through a prior podcast that I did, correct?
Yes, that is correct. You actually had a podcast that I was listening to that was shared on one of the advocating parenting groups on Facebook.
And you reached out to me. One, I want to say thank you. And two, it is a huge step to be wanting to open yourself up to the public and people about your story, because it's not easy. As a person who's been involved with the foster care system myself before in the past, I want to advocate for children and parents. So what I am doing is asking parents about their story, about their situation. So at any time you can get started at a point to where the issues that you are having with CPS.
Our testimony began back in 2015, a few years ago. I do have 5 children. At the time, I was a single parent and I was living in San Antonio. I had initially at that time, I was really overwhelmed, and I had reached out to a local phone number that's listed here for Texas in regards to trying to receive some resources for help. So I reached out to this toll-free number and in hopes that I would get some phone numbers or some contacts on where to try to get some kind of be navigated to get the help that I needed at that time with childcare and so forth. To
interrupt you really quick. So you saying there was a time in your life where you wanted assistance because you were going through some things yourself. And so you reached out to this group or this organization that had information on how you could get assistance with getting help.
Yes, that's correct. I did have at that time, had actually officers showed up at my door to do a welfare check is what I was told at that time. I briefly spoke with the officer. I explained to the officer that I had been overwhelmed at that time, that I was currently looking for another job and I was having a hard time with childcare. I just kind of briefly explained our current situation. And then I get a knock on the door from Child Protective Services. I had 2 men show up at my door. And at that time, I was not familiar with CPS at all. I didn't know anything much about them. They kind of, did a walkthrough through our townhouse, and I spoke with them, and I was given some information that if I voluntarily took myself to a psychiatric hospital to get evaluated, that all 5 of my children could go to a safe place for 2 days, is exactly what I was told. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. But in that moment, at that time, I was evaluating the mental stress that I was under, and after some time decided that it was best that maybe I should try to go get some help. I believe them.
Right. So everybody that's paying attention, let's make this clear. You called to get help because you were overwhelmed. Nobody got in contact with you and said, hey, your mental is not good. This is not right with your children. You on your own volunteered to call to get help from a certain organization. And next thing you knew, you had an officer and a caseworker knocking at your door wanting to do a wellness check.
Yes.
After that wellness check, the information that they gave you was like, okay, well, maybe you should check yourself in somewhere to get some help since you're overwhelmed. We'll take your kids for 48 hours and then we'll go from there.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, what happened after that 48 hours?
After that 48 hours, I was first served with paperwork from the state, I believe at that time, not CPS, but the state, stating that my voluntary stay had turned into a permanent stay because they believed that I was a threat to myself and that I could be a threat to others. I was being diagnosed with major depressive disorder by the psychiatrist that I was seeing there at the hospital. And I was then transferred to another hospital. And then I was served maybe a couple of days after that with paperwork from Child Protective Services stating that they were going to temporarily take custody of my children because I was diagnosed with depression.
Right. So you was getting some help, and 48 hours turned into, well, they said, we want to spend a little bit more time with you, with your health. And that's when you were served papers from CPS saying that they're going to take your children for a little while longer at this time.
Yeah, that's correct. And, I had lots of questions. I didn't understand, but here I was stuck in this hospital.
So they served you papers. Did anybody come to the hospital where you was at to talk with you?
No, never.
So you just got some papers in the mail saying we're keeping your kids because you are at this time you're in a residential situation.
Yes.
at the hospital, and they said, we're going to keep your kids until further notice until you get better.
That's correct. I was served with paperwork, I believe at the time through one of the staff members at the hospital, but yes, no one ever came to speak with me or anything.
Okay, and how long did your stay end up being in total?
It was almost a month, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, somewhere in that frame.
Okay, and when you were released, did they release your children back to you?
No.
And what was their reason for not releasing your children back to you?
At the time that I recall reading and asking I see neglect is the primary thing that I kept reading on the documents, just neglect.
After you're out of the hospital, you're reading a document that came from the state saying that we want to keep your kids because of the neglect.
Yes.
At this time, you had to be confused because it's like, how can I be neglecting my kids when I called to get help myself? It wasn't for you guys to come take my children. I was asking for help, and now I got a whole nother battle to fight.
That was exactly it. I had an extremely hard time coping with that, understanding that. As I mentioned, I was not familiar with him at all, and I felt tricked.
Right. When you were home, did any caseworker physically come to your house at that time, or a social worker, excuse me?
Once I was released from the hospital, I'm trying to think back because there's so many things that happened. I'd like to say that at some point, I believe I had a caseworker show up like maybe one time initially in the very beginning before I decided to move, months later. But I primarily remember my interactions with them at the Child Protective Services office in San Antonio.
Definitely your first impression of Child Protective Services must have been horrific because you went to go get help yourself and then find out they want to keep your kids with the accusation of neglect when you're out of the hospital, because I'm assuming they wouldn't have released you from the hospital if you had a good bill of health. So you was capable of going back home.
Yeah, I was capable, and I was not given that right. I didn't understand the paperwork, the language that was being spoken in the paperwork. I didn't understand it at all.
All right. And were you letting them know that you're confused? What's going on? Can somebody help me?
Yes.
And you received pushback?
Yeah, I did. I signed documents that I shouldn't have signed. At some point, I agreed to things I shouldn't have agreed to. I did not verbally express that I did not understand what was happening. What was this? What was that? And all of my concerns were pretty much just kind of swept under the rug.
Take your time.
I just kind of did what they told me to do because I was convinced that maybe at that time that maybe this was something that I was just supposed to do. And I wanted my kids to come back home. So you wanted to comply. You wanted to go with the things that they wanted you to do so you can get your children back in the house. Yeah.
If I had to scale your interaction with Child Protective Services at that time, 1 being the lowest, being super poor, 10 being the highest, being a great experience, what number would you give them?
I would say 0.
And you experience the system itself fighting you, bringing up things that were old and not wanting you to get your children back. And this is one reason why we're doing these shows, is because your story is not unique. There's a lot of mothers, there's a lot of fathers, there's a lot of parents in the household right now experiencing these things. And I want to get across to everybody that if you have over 8,000 people saying the same thing, something has to be wrong somewhere.
Absolutely.
It does. Everybody's just not lying. And one thing that I like to bring up on my podcast with Keeping It Real is this. Once a person has committed a crime, once a person has done something wrong in the eyesight of the powers that be, aka the government or the state, they tend to want to give us life sentences. And what I mean by that is, you can be doing everything right and correct for 5 years and 10 years. And soon as a stump comes in the way, we are always reminded of who we used to be. Who we used to be, or the things that we used to do. And they use those things in court against us. Did you experience that when you were going through court hearings?
100% I experienced that.
So during that whole time, your mental health now you're just now getting out of the hospital, trying to get help with your mental health. And I guess, well, I'm not going to say I guess, I'm sorry for saying that, but you had to have went back into remission, if for lack of a better word, with finding out that not only are you home, but they're telling you can't have your children back. How long did they keep your children after that?
I fought for a year and a half, trying to bring them home. So, I'm sorry, I'm crying.
No, you okay. You're okay.
I would never want any parent to experience what we had to go through. And it's
hard. I know. Take your time. It has to be hard. I know it has to be hard. And this is why we're doing this. Children should not be taken out the home if parents are fit to take care of their children. And you proved in every way possible. You went to your classes. In our conversation prior to doing this interview, a few things we talked about. You complied with the things that they wanted you to do, but they still had you jumping over hurdles to get your children. I want to bring up really quick, you brought up within that year and a half that they had your children, didn't you say, if I'm correct, that within that year and a half, your children did not have a stable foster home or living space for longer than 2 months at a time?
They experienced lots of moves. The 2 months at a time actually was the second time, the second go around with them. But they were absolutely, I remember my smallest children, the youngest 3.
Okay.
Well, actually all 5 of them at one point, they were in I don't know, some kind of a
group home.
Yeah. There was like lots of church, like nuns and stuff there. I don't know what the right terminology for that is, but they were even there at one point, which later I found out got shut down. But they were moved a lot, yes. And
okay, I want to back up for a second for the listeners, because in the beginning of this broadcast, I had said that people on the outside looking in would say, well, the state just don't take people's children for no reason. They just don't come in and take children. And like I was saying earlier, there's more than 8,000 voices that would disagree with that because they have experienced it. Yeah. So you said this was the second time. So the first time when you got out of the hospital, you fought a year and a half to get them back.
Yeah.
You got them back. What brought them back into your life, CPS?
I had a phone call on allegations against me about abuse to my children.
And that ordeal lasted how long?
That also lasted a whole year and a half.
And this is the time that you found out that for a whole year and a half, every 2 months they were moving your children to different foster homes.
Yep. Every 2 months they were moving, and they were all separate.
So you fought another year and a half. I want to say this. Congratulations for having your babies back. If everybody could see us right now, you would understand, because I can hear the babies in the background. Congratulations. I'm glad that you have them. Can you briefly touch a little bit on what they explained to you their experience was or has been through this?
No. Yeah, I can explain it. I'm controlling my emotions here. Very painful.
I know, and I'm watching you, and you're doing an awesome job. If you need a second, we could take a break. We could do that and get back to it if you want to.
I still, to this day, I'm they bring up things that happened to them in foster care, such as abuse. Just lots of horrible things. I had a lot of these things my children had expressed to me when I would visit them before they were home. And I fought within every ounce of me it's like no one cared. To me, it was like all the information had to be hidden because it made CPS look bad. So every time that my child spoke about these things, I made sure that I reported these things and that I did everything that I could to get them out of there. But now that they've been home, they talk to me about just the abuse that they experienced, the detainment. I have a 7-year-old son who was then 6, who was in a foster care home or group home where there was lots of other children there. And he told me about, still talks to me about detainment.
He uses the word detainment.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. So they separated your children?
They separated all 5 of my children, yes.
That's just hearing that. And for all those who are paying attention right now, for the system, the CPS system, to uproot 5 children and separate them from each other, let alone their mother, is very traumatic. Very, very traumatic. I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even begin to imagine the loopholes that you had to go through, because in our conversations prior to right now, you was letting me know that you had to go to this place to visit one of your children, go this place to visit another child, this place. They took you through the ringer, didn't they?
Yeah, I made sure. Yeah, they just took me through the ringer. I showed up every time.
Good for you. Good for you.
I was there.
Good for you. And that's why you do have them back. But there are parents that's going through the same thing that you're going through now that still do not have their children. And your voice is helping this. I feel as though that things that happen in systems that are corrupt need to be exposed. I'm not saying that the whole system is bad, because we have caseworkers and social workers that want to work. Unfortunately, some of us get the bad ones.
I agree.
In your experience in dealing with CPS, caseworkers and foster care service workers would like for us all to believe that the whole goal is to reunify the family. The whole goal, if there's a problem going on, and I said this last week in my show for all those that was paying attention, if a person has a problem with addiction, if a person has a problem with alcoholism, if a person has a problem with their mental health, I see getting help and getting things fixed. And when you do what you need to do, and you're seen to be competent to be, our children should be returned to us without any hardship, if you're capable, if we are capable of take care of them. So why are they still keeping our children? And that's a rhetorical question for everybody to ponder that's listening to this broadcast right now, because I'm sure if we could connect with at least 1,000 parents right now, I continue to hear the same kind of stories. So there has to be validity to this. It does. So what do we do? What do we do? You are a young mother. You was a young mother who wanted to get help, and you did something that a lot of young women wouldn't do. That's actually call and get help. You know, outside of family members or outside of friends will not go call and get help. You did this, and it started a whole roller coaster for your family. What do you think can be done to change this, in your own opinion and words, to make the reunification of children with their families not go the way that yours did?
I would say that, well, there's a few things.
I know it's a whole long list. You can just name one or two. I'm kind of trying to paint a picture right now of something.
Yeah. What they considered to be an imminent danger, to go to the courts and, before a judge and decide that, this person is bad, this person did this, XYZ, and immediately try and, go get a warrant for emergency order to go and take their children, physically take. In my case, my children were taken from school.
Right. So while you were gone, they came to the school and removed all your children without your knowledge.
Yeah, I was at work and my children were at school, and they took all of my children without my knowledge, and I was not allowed the opportunity to present myself in that court, initial court, emergency court hearing that I was told later I should have been to. I never was notified about it to at least try to fight against the allegations that they were presenting against me at that time. I never got the opportunity to do that, but I would say. Okay,
let me. I guess that was a loaded question, and I apologize for that. What advice or what words do you have for a young mother or father going through the same thing you went through, what would you tell them to do? How would you tell them to dot their I's and cross their T's?
First, me, from personal experience, this is my personal, is keep God involved through every step of the way. From my personal experiences with dealing with TPS, document and record everything. Document and record everything.
Everything. Make
everything.
Copies. Record phone calls.
Everything.
And why is it important that everything needs to be documented? Phone calls need to be recorded. Appointment papers need to be copied and passed out to everybody. Why are you telling us to do that?
For your own legal protection.
Yes.
For your own legal protection. So there's no hearsay or things are, words aren't mixed up. And I'm pretty sure we all had cases of that happening. There was, lying under oath and lots of other very horrible things that happen that can't happen when you have these recordings and you're legally protecting yourself. So that's why that's important.
So do you believe that had you have the knowledge that you have now in the beginning of all this, you would have been a little bit safer?
Absolutely, 100%.
Everybody that pays attention to this is a situation, everybody that's going through these certain situations, one thing that is common with all of this is what you just said. Document, and document some more. And make sure that these things that's being said and done is recorded and filed for the protection of our children. And it's upsetting that it has gotten to the point to where certain people choose, because of how they live life or how they think life should be lived, choose to take children out the household because we do not parent the way they think we should. I think that's backwards. I think that's wrong. If we're taking care of our children, if we're providing a roof over their head, food, not abusing them, not hurting them, but going through issues, because all families go through situations. All families go through ups and downs, but we don't want to live in a world or think we living in a world to where if I make a mistake as a parent, the state in which I live in is going to come basically just take my children. We have to get away from that. And the only way that we're going to get away from that is if we stand up and speak out right now. I wish that these platforms was available a long time ago because, like I said, how we met and how you found out about me is because we're listening to 8,000 plus other parents going through the same situation that you going through or went through. And some of those stories don't end as well as yours. They are literally terminating people's rights, and we got to make sure that we have safeguards. I wanted to ask you a question just for me personally. I feel as though actually there's a group of people getting together talking about helping out families and children that's dealing with foster care and CPS. If you had another therapist, if you had a non-court appointed attorney, because I understand they give you their attorneys, they give you their therapists, they give you their counselors, they give you everything. And these same people that we have conversations with, these same peoples that have good conversation with us, that makes us feel like everything is going to be okay, usually end up being the same ones testifying against you in court to have your children took.
Absolutely.
We need to start having our own therapists, our own attorneys, and our own counselors sitting in with these CPS workers and social workers that's coming to our houses. Had you had the same group of people that they sent you to go get help with, if you had a whole nother group there to help you go through this process, I don't think your children would have been gone for that long.
Yeah, I agree.
Something's got to change. It does. And, I can't stress enough how humbling and how appreciative I am for your courage. Not going through it once, but going through it twice. And guess what? Them babies behind you. You got your babies. And that's good. So you keep your head up, you keep doing what you're doing. And like you said, keep advocating. Before we get ready to go, if you had to leave us all with a message to take into the week, what would that message be?
Be still and listen to your inner intuition. Keep fighting the good fight.
As the great John Lewis would always say, let's get into good trouble. And the good trouble we're going to get into is making sure that families and children are being treated fairly and not being stripped out of the house. I want to thank you again for your time and your courage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I have another spoken word piece for you guys. The title of this piece is called Unbegotten Foster Child. It's a poem that I wrote that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to share that with you guys. But before I get to that, I cannot express the severity of what it means to be a foster child and the system of foster care. It's a growing epidemic. There's a record of over 500,000 foster kids across the nation that are being taken away from their parents, their loved ones, and being placed in homes with strangers who a lot of times don't have the best intentions for them. They're being abused and mistreated, and this is a situation that shouldn't be taken lightly. Myself, I've been in the system 16 years. I've had my trials and tribulations, and it's not easy. So without further ado, let me express my frustrations. Dear Heavenly Father, no weapon formed against me shall prosper now. If we are all children of the Most High, why was I raised as a foster child? I need answers. Answers I'm not gonna find in my case file. I showed up to my child in a suit with a great smile. I don't know what stranger. The fact that I didn't know that I was in danger, or how they can just take us from the ones who named us and place us with perfect strangers. They promised us better than what we had. No more mom and dad just told us to pack a bag and hop in the back of the cab. I grew up frustrated and angry. Can you blame me? Therapy and counseling can never change me. They would ask me, am I okay? I would tell them how I'm feeling just to go home feeling the same way. Right or wrong? I never felt so alone. Unfit parents, a parent that I couldn't go home. Praying that one day I'll be right where I belong. But this is blasphemy. I thought they was coming back for me when I got back on their feet, but actually the reality was they never came after me. What a tragedy. Freedom over family. But I understand. Father God, you had better plans. It happened for a reason. I put it all in your hands. You was testing me. I know that you blessing me. A voice for the voiceless. This is my destiny, and I'm ready now. In Jesus' name I pray. Your only begotten foster child.
SCORE, a national business of professionals volunteering to mentor small businesses and startups. Available throughout Muskegon, Lakeshore, Leadington, Grand Haven, White Lake, and Newaygo County. SCORE business professionals can be reached by calling any of the Chamber's offices or by logging on to score.org. Let SCORE help you strengthen your business.
Black Circle Radio personally invites you to tag along every week during their all-vinyl Sonic Adventures. Honest and experienced broadcasting live on Muskegon's 100.9 every Monday night from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. More information can be found at www.blackcircleradio.com. Black Circle Radio is thrilled to be a supporter of This Is the Situation. United we win.
Family, we back. And you know your big brother B always searches far and wide, but I didn't have to search too far from the gentleman that I'm getting ready to introduce now. So without further ado, I'm gonna let him introduce himself to you guys. For those that paid attention and pay attention to This Is the Situation, he's not a stranger to our show. What's going on, big bro?
How's everybody doing? This is L.A. Kendrick.
Talk to us a little bit about what you got going on.
Well, this book is the second part. It's the second installment to the first book, The Benefits of a Bully. That was the original book. And this is just picking up at the Latimer Academy, at Tubman Middle School, but the Latimer Academy. And these kids are selected by an undercover shadow agency that puts them into the Latimer Academy. And they do basic work like the Men in Black, but they're older.
Okay.
The agency is a lot older than the Men in Black. And the story is just solid all the way around. It's talking about strength in family, morals, respect, having a code, education, friendship, how to deal with a bully, how to eat right, how to exercise, the whole nine.
Right. So what was the motivation behind it?
You know, coming up as a young guy, and you know how we didn't have a lot of representation of stories. We had the Thundercats, Voltron, we had He-Man, we had G.I. Joe. Great stories, great moral concepts, preaching education and teamwork, things like that. But what I never saw was representation of a black person doing that. And so I said, well, if me and my boy used to talk about it, we're not as close as we used to be. He was my best friend at the time. We used to always say they couldn't wait to get home, but we used to always say that if we ever came to a position where we could do something, we're going to try to change that narrative to where you see us doing the positive things and the proper things. Because again, a lot of stuff that you see in entertainment has a lot of negative concepts about black men. And I always wanted to change that myth. I didn't want that to be part of what you see, because every time when you turn around, there is no representation, not even in video games that much, cartoons, anything like that. So I decided to write the Destiny versus Chaos series first, which is adult sci-fi and horror, right? And I did a speaking engagement and had a bunch of kids come up to the table, black kids, Hispanic kids, Middle Eastern kids, I kid you not, and they were looking for something that they could identify with at the table. And I was like, I don't have anything for them, right? Even though I do have comic books, but the comic books aren't for them, so to speak, because the comic books are kind of adult edgy. And I said, they said, well, do you have anything that we can identify with? Because every time we pick up a book, it doesn't represent the broader spectrum. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. The next time I see you guys, I will definitely have a book written specifically for you guys, right? For the 10 and up group, and that's when I came up with The Benefits of a Bully. Originally it was called Sedale. I had wrote that book back in 1996. So as you can see, I've been writing for a very long time, and I always... Yeah,
your portfolio I'm sorry for cutting you off, but your portfolio, this is you getting ready to go on your 8th book now, ain't you?
Right, the 8th book is already finished. I'm just,
okay.
Me and my agent are just trying to promote this book because it's got so much buzz around it because of the concepts that it has. It's like, if you've ever seen the cartoon The Avatar, if you've ever seen Dragon Ball Z, if you've ever seen any of the good action, don't stop, fight, stay motivated, don't give up, keep fighting, keep pushing, use your own mind, those kinds of things, those kinds of concepts, that's what has attracted so many people to what I'm doing. And that work is paramount in these times because you don't have good stories like that anymore. These stories they're usually recycled a lot of times. Even when you see movies, the movies are recycled. And there's a lot of, you can go back. I mean, you can look at The Matrix, right?
Right.
Sophie Stewart. I didn't know she did The Matrix, right? And she won her money and her lawsuit. I didn't know she had done the work. She actually invented the Terminator too. I didn't know that. Right. So you got Alexander Dumas. He did Les Trois Mousquetaires, which translates The Three Musketeers. He did that in 1844. You got Kevin Grivix. He did the original concept, and these are all black people. Black Frenchman, black female, and you got Kevin. He did the Underworld films, right? So we have a niche. There's a notch and a niche that we can fill, and they do really, really well. Look at Three Musketeers. That's legendary. You can
the more representation of. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Don't even give me.
We can go back a few. What you said is it hit home because the world, the narrative of that is changing now because we are starting to see more people that look like us representing us. Like the commercials are changing now, the movies are changing now, TV is changing now. But how awesome is it to have an author that's writing stories about young black men and young black women and families coming together, because that's a rare, I'm not going to say it's really rare, but that is something that's needed because like you said, them children running up to your table saying, man, we want to see something that kind of represent us. We want a superhero. Just look how Black Panther took off.
Right.
You know, Black Panther is huge because it represents us. You know, we have our own action hero, and then now they're expanding that to, what's this next thing, to different nationalities and races. So what you're doing is very commendable and respectable, because I know growing up, there wasn't many characters. There wasn't many cartoon characters that I could look up to.
I can't think of it.
I looked up to it. I could look up to a lot of them. The only one I can think of right now at the top of the head was Fat Albert.
What about Static Shock? Remember Static Shock?
Static Shock, I do not.
See, that was like the last good superhero, because he was a standoff superhero. He was with Milestone Comics, and I can't think of Dwayne McDuffie was the guy who invented him, and right. Dwayne has a guy named Icon too. But Static was the last time that I saw a good, solid, action-based black character. Now again, he had a circle of people from all nationalities of all walks around him. So I don't want anybody to get it twisted like you're just trying to we're trying to just say that this is the only genre. No, I'm not saying that, but we need to see representation of ourselves and that narrative